Okay, I think I'm now done buying anything off of eBay. So is it just me, or does it feel like every time that we go to buy something, it's a roll of the dice, a complete gamble as to whether or not we're going to get the product we think we're getting? So I just want to talk about my experiences recently buying stuff off of eBay, and I want to know just basically, can anyone relate to this? So to start with, graphics tablets. Now, I've been an artist for over 20 years, working on and off part-time professionally, and I've always used Wacom products ever since the first ever Wacom Cintiq tablet. I think it was their first ever graphics tablet. So I was using that way back in the day, like 22 years ago, whenever it was, when I first got that tablet. Since then, I've had like, I kind of upgraded to Cintiq. So I had a Cintiq 22 HD, then a Cintiq 27 QHD, and then last week I decided I'd upgrade again to the Cintiq 24 Pro. A couple of reasons for that. I've always felt the 27-inch was a little bit too big for my table space, and I just don't think it's necessary to have a screen that is that big for artwork and stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's much of a thing, but I always kind of feel like when you're creating art, you know, if you have a big canvas, it just takes longer to just draw a big line, whereas if it's all compacted, you just go whoop, and then you've got that little line drawn. Yeah, I just thought, okay, I don't need the 27. Let's downgrade a bit. Let's go for the 4K, higher pixel density. It's supposed to have better parallax and stuff like that. So it should be overall a better tablet. And I thought, okay, let's go for it. Few cons with the this particular tablet. It has fans in it that kind of rev up and are quite noisy compared to my previous tablet. And, you know, that's not ideal. But yeah, overall, yeah, I bought a new tablet, but there was a problem. It wasn't plain sailing because I was buying this tablet used on eBay. You know, it wasn't going to be perfect. You know, it was going to have had some life in it. You know, and I expected that. Trouble is, it was listed as like new, and I thought, okay, brilliant. That's what I want. Being a bit of a perfectionist, you know, I like to have products, and I think if you're buying like a Wacom product, you know, they're the premium. In graphics tablets, you know, it's the same as if you're buying a car, you know, you buy a Lamborghini, a Ferrari or a Maserati or something, you expect it to be in good condition and working. You know, you're not going to tolerate dents, damages and scratches, because that's just not how this thing works. So anyway, bought the tablet. I was told it was new, took it out of the box and it was rattling. It had what seemed to be like loose debris, bits of plastic screws inside the screen. I could hear it. Pretty worrying, of course. And I was thinking, oh no, was it damaged on transit? Started like inspecting the tablet. It turned out the legs were broken. And this was something which wouldn't have happened during transit. So I had surmised that basically too much weight had been put on the tablet at some point and the legs had buckled and snapped. And then the inside, where the legs connect to the back of the screen, had all got sheared off. There were loose screws and, you know, plastic inside the screen now, and obviously the legs are wobbly, don't work properly. Disappointing. They could have mentioned this in the ad, and I did, before even buying the tablet, ask the seller if there were any problems, any dead pixels, things like that, and they assured me no, it's all okay. So, you know, I had double reassurance. Not only did it not mention it on the ad, but even when I contacted the seller, they were adamant that it was all, you know, all working as it should. But it wasn't. They lied, or just didn't mention it. So, you know, I thought, well, this isn't right. You know, although I did get somewhat of a bargain compared to getting it new, but you know, you expect that. You buy used products, you expect to get it cheaper than if you buy it new. But I don't think, given that it's got this sort of loose debris in it, given that the legs are now broken, that it was worth what I paid for. I feel like, you know, I needed to, you know, like if I was to resell it, and I was to mention that problem, I probably wouldn't get what I paid for it. So I got back to the seller and I said, look, it's got this problem. I found that someone online is selling a broken version of this same tablet. It was £250, that's about $300. I said I could buy that tablet and then I could take that apart, take apart the one that I bought from the seller, combine both broken tablets to create basically a working tablet. Obviously that would take hours of labour, but I would be willing to do that. Alternatively, send it off to Wacom, although I know that I think they roughly charge about £900 to repair a screen, so it's about $1,200, something like that. So I would imagine that repairing the back would be of a similar cost, several hundreds maybe, let's put it like that. the seller got back to me and said, no, be reasonable. And I was like, okay, well, I think I am being reasonable. Firstly, you know, an apology for lying to me would be nice as well. They obviously knew that there was a problem there. They didn't say that it was fine when they sent it or whatever. So at least they didn't double down in that regard. But, you know, and I then emailed back. I explained that I felt that, you know, the cost was reasonable, why I thought it was reasonable, what it would cost to actually fix it. I said, I mean, I can use it without. I could mount it to, you know, an arm, a bracket, and then not use the legs for the tablet, which was my plan anyway. I said, you know, given that, you know, I'd be happy to maybe just accept a £200 refund, a partial refund. And then the seller was just like, no, that's too much. I'll give you less. And I said, okay, well, just, you know, if we're going to mess around, just don't worry about it. You know, I'll just send it back. I'll buy another one at a later date. You know, given the fact that this tablet's quite old and, you know, they come up semi-often, you know, for that sort of price, you know, once every 3-4 months. I'm not in any rush. I've got a graphics tablet. I don't need another one desperately. I just thought it'd be nice to upgrade. So I just said, I'll get a refund. And then they said, okay, we'll send it back. Send me the tracking information. I was like, no. You will pay for the return, you know, postage. You sent me an item that was defective without telling me. You've messed me around. So you're going to have to do that. And obviously they realised that, you know, if they were to just refund me the amount that they said they would, plus the cost it would actually cost to, you know, send this item back insured, it would cost probably more than I was originally asking for as a refund. So in the end, they did actually refund me. So there you go. It kind of worked out in the end. But this whole dilemma was just so annoying. It was just something that I weren't expecting to deal with. Anyway, I took the screen apart. I saw the screws, you know, cleared them out, put it back together. And now it kind of, you know, it kind of works, but it's irreparable without getting a new back panel from a spare replacement screen. I'm not sure whether I'm going to repair it or not. It was quite a faff to actually open up the tablet screen itself. It's not as easy as opening up like an LCD TV, which I've managed to repair before when my TV went down. And the funny thing is as well, like most people probably wouldn't do this. I think trying to repair electronics and screens, like 99% of people just wouldn't bother. They'd just throw it away or, you know, find like an expert repair shop that would do it. So I can do this kind of stuff, but it will take me, you know, 3 or 4 hours more than a professional. Plus, there's always these little anomalies. Like when I took apart the Cintiq itself, it was like you couldn't like completely remove the back from the screen. Like the back was connected with all these super fine cables and stuff. And I thought, the way it was all set up, I thought, I don't know if I could put this back together, even if I could completely take it apart. I won't go into the details. I actually watched a video about someone deconstructing this particular tablet and putting it back together, and they mentioned all of this. You could watch it if you were interested. But yeah, the whole thing was just stressful. Like, I just wanted to buy a product, I wanted it for it to work, and I knew it was going to take some time to set it up because I've got this Ergotron arm where all the cables are kind of routed through the arm and they're all kind of attached via like clips and tags and stuff, and they all kind of go behind the desk, and then I've got things, you know, behind the desk as well. It was just going to take a lot of setup in order to set this whole tablet up. I also noticed that the power cable was quite short, so I needed to buy an extension for the power cable for this particular model. It didn't use the same power socket that the previous tablet used. So anyway, that's one thing sorted, but God, it was just stressful. And then at the same week, I'd bought a hard drive. So I'd bought an external hard drive and a caddy for it to basically go in, or it was a regular hard drive, and I wanted to turn it into an external hard drive. So I bought this hard drive, and again, told that it all worked perfectly, plugged it in, it didn't work. Tried it in another computer, still having problems. I ran a disk check to see if there were any issues, and yeah, there were issues. There were bad sectors on the hard drive. You know, it was basically due for imminent failure. So it could have been used, or like parts of the hard disk could have been used to store data on, but I didn't want to take that risk. I thought it could break at any time, and I don't want to store data. The whole point is to back up my computer data onto another hard drive, keep that in a separate location just in case there was ever like a fire or a burglary or whatever. Because I've realised that just digital data is so valuable, you know, and you can store it on cloud systems and stuff and pay annual subscriptions for hundreds and hundreds every year for someone else to do it, or you just buy a hard disk, stick it in another location, a friend or family's place or whatever, and then, you know, just back it up maybe once every 6 months or whatever. I mean, I already back up my data anyway, but I wanted like a second layer of backing up just for extra protection. So I realised I've got all my family photos on it. I've got all my artwork, all my products that I sell, my digital products, which if I lost, that would literally be the end of my business. I would never be able to like recoup that. I would never be able to like redraw the artwork that I'm currently selling on prints, you know, like high resolution versions. That would be it. You know, I'd literally lose my livelihood. So it's, you know, imperative that I back this stuff up and then double back it up just to make sure that there's no way, hopefully, you know, there's always a way, but generally speaking, there's no way I can lose this data because it is just so important. And yeah, anyway, bought this hard drive. It only cost about £70, about $100. Again, used because, you know, I'm not going to be using it regularly. I just want to store some data on it, then, you know, keep it somewhere else for 6 months before I potentially grab it, re-back up on it. Yeah, it didn't work. And then, you know, I'm going backwards and forwards with the seller again on eBay, you know, explaining the problem. They agreed to refund, but then they say, oh no, I'm not going to refund you straight away because I can't afford to do it. And I'm like, really? And then they start saying stuff like, do you think I could sell it again with the damage or with the bad sectors on it? And I'm like, this is your problem. Like, why am I doing this? But for some reason, being the person I am, I'm like, yes, you know, given the fact that, you know, it does have this issue, there are other sellers on, you know, on eBay that do sell faulty hard drives, and, you know, they tend to get between this price and that price for it. I don't know why I'm doing all the legwork for this seller. Anyway, then they say, yeah, okay, I'm happy to refund you, but can you just tell me what you were intending to use the hard drive for? And I'm thinking, what do you think I'm going to use a hard drive for? Do you think I'm going to use it as a hat? Do you think I'm going to use it as a pair of shoes or a single shoe? Like, no, it's there to store data on. I just thought, this is ridiculous. Like, what a stupid, dumb question. So I'm going backwards and forwards for ages just trying to get a refund sorted. And obviously, with this one, the seller did agree, but I had to send it back. So then I'm having to repackage this hard disk drive, you know, go to the post office, you know, a special trip. I literally have to drive. It's not too far up the road, but I literally have to drive to the post office to hand this return in. It's costing me fuel, you know, like, I shouldn't have to do this, but okay, that's I guess the risk you take for using eBay to some degree. Okay, the next week, this week, I buy a printer, an A3 printer to allow me to print my art prints. And I'm always a bit scared about buying printers because they have a habit of the print heads blocking if they're not used regularly. So in the ad, the seller said, you know, I've got this printer, it all works fine. And then I messaged them again, as I do, because I want to just double check. You know, I said, has it been tested recently? Because I want to double check that it works. And the seller was like, yes, it's recently been tested, all works fine. So I get the printer through. It was poorly packaged, slightly damaged when it turned up. One of the panels on the side of this printer become dislodged. Nothing had luckily sheared off, which I would have expected given how badly packaged this printer was. So I managed to reattach this panel. And this is a big A3 printer. This is a big sort of 22 kilogram, you know, meter long, 3 foot long printer. It's massive. And it was just wrapped around with a bit of like bit of sort of towel covering and one single layer of cardboard. I'm amazed it even arrived in the condition it did. So anyway, I set it up, go to use it. It doesn't work. It's just not printing. The print head is blocked. The one thing I feared, the one thing that I wanted to mitigate at all costs was a blocked print head. You know, in order to test it, because it didn't have any ink in it, I had to go away and spend like £25 on some ink, on a set of inks, you know, which is quite cheap for a set of inks. You know, the official inks could cost upwards of £100. So yeah, I went away, bought this ink, put it in the machine, it just didn't work. And then I ran a print head clean cycle and again, then a deep clean cycle and again, testing every time to see if I can clear the block. It doesn't work. I then take the print head out and I bathe it in some alcohol, which I've done before with printers, and very occasionally that can resolve the problem. And you know, and I did a little bathing of it, just a very shallow bath, just to clean the actual print head so it doesn't damage it or get into the sort of circuit board and stuff like that. And you could see like there were like clumps of ink that were sort of pouring out of this thing, and I thought, okay, this might solve it. So left it for a while, come back, cleaned it up, put it back in the printer, put the ink in, did a print test. It still had clogged heads. I'd managed to unclog 4 of the heads using this method, but 3 more of the heads were still blocked. Because this is like a 10 ink system or 12 ink, it's got like loads of ink, so that's why, yeah, just one clogged head is just enough to completely ruin it. So yeah, I was like, well, I've literally done all I can. I'm not an expert printer repairer, and when it comes to repairing printers, like, you have to be an expert with these things. They're pretty complicated. But it was just so annoying because, you know, it obviously hadn't been tested before it was sent. It'd obviously been sitting there for quite some time for the ink to dry up to that extent. So then I had to contact the seller once again, and I had to say, look, I bought this printer from you, doesn't work. You know, it wasn't... I wanted to say I'm pissed off. I'm really frustrated that you wasted my time by saying it works. Obviously it doesn't. But I didn't. I just said, look, I'm going to need to, you know, here's a photo of the print head tests, the nozzle check that I did. It's not working. Going to need a refund. 24 hours later, they respond and say, yep, okay, here's your postage label. Stick it on the parcel and take it to your nearest parcel shop, which is further away than the post office. It's about a sort of 15-minute drive from me. And I'm like, really? I have to drive all the way there? But then the label only covers parcels up to the weight of 15 kilograms. And I'm like, okay, but this is a 22 kilogram package. It's super heavy. The label isn't going to cover it. And what's more, I shouldn't have to transport this massive heavy thing all the way to a parcel shop. And in my experience trying to deliver big parcels, some of these parcel shops don't even accept huge parcels this big as well anyway. So I'm thinking, is this just going to be another sort of stressful episode of me going to the parcel shop, finding out they won't accept it for whatever reason? So I just said, look, can you, okay, just refund that label and just get a courier to come collect it from my house. I'll make sure I'm in, which is again another inconvenience, you know, like, you know, people have to go to work and stuff, so you've got to take a day off work waiting for the courier or whatever. But you know, I'll arrange someone else to make sure that they're home so that the courier could potentially take it. And now I'm in a stage of just waiting to see if the seller is amenable to that. And if they're not, I'm going to have to just contact eBay and say, look, here's the situation. This is going to cause a lot of issues due to the sort of size and weight. You know, I shouldn't be expected to literally pick up a 22 kilo parcel and, you know, like either walk, you know, all the way to the parcel shop to post it, which is impossible unless you're like world's strongest man, and or, you know, I pay to drive there, which is again just more expense. And you know, and I spent hours, like 3 hours, trying to get this printer working. I shouldn't have to do that. It should all be working out the box. So I've just got to a point now where it's like, right, I think I'm done with buying stuff off eBay. I don't know why people do this. Like, I mean, I sell stuff on eBay, either it be my art prints, or, you know, just items that I want to get rid of. But I don't ever dream of selling stuff that doesn't work, or at least without saying that it doesn't work. And then, yeah, like, I wouldn't lie to people, because I just think, well, they're going to have to return it once it, you know, it turns out that it doesn't work. Like, I mean, with eBay or Amazon or something like that in particular, the buyer is always right. You know, the buyer is always insured. You'll never be in a situation where you as a seller can get away with selling broken, faulty goods, because the buyer will just say, look, it's broken, I want a refund, and eBay always sides with the buyer. So yeah, I just don't see the point in lying. I don't see the point in, you know, and I suppose you could say to some degree it's either a lie or it's laziness in testing the item, because you could just test it yourself and double check these problems and then mention it in the ads, but these people don't. But in the case of me specifically asking people, you know, I want to check that this item is perfectly okay before I buy. I shouldn't have to do that, but I do it for peace of mind. And then when the sellers get back to me and they tell me that, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it, and then it turns out it's not, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting any peace of mind whether I ask if it works or not. I just can't believe people. Like, why are people like this? Why bother selling stuff that doesn't work and lying and pretending it does? Just be honest. You know, there's still people that buy stuff for parts if it doesn't work, so just list it like that. Because, like, at the end of the day, I've spent, I'd say like a whole week just trying to buy things and then resolve the returns and all this kind of stuff. The only way, I guess, to mitigate all of these problems is just to buy things from new. You know, forget paying your £800, your $1,000 or whatever for a second-hand used Cintiq graphics tablet. Just buy one new from Wacom for sort of £2,000, you know, $2,400 or whatever it costs. You can do that, but I don't have the money to do that. You know, I'm on a bit of a budget here. You know, I'm an artist. What do you expect? I'm a starving artist. We don't have crazy amounts of money. If we want to buy graphics tablets or hard drives or printers, you know, we can. You know, some of us can afford it. Others can't, and so then you have to go on eBay, and then you have to deal with all this kind of broken stuff. Now, I appreciate this is just a very much a me problem, and I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not huge. You know, it's not like a relative has just died or come down with illness, or, you know, there's some massive catastrophe. This isn't a competition. I'm not trying to say my problems are worse than yours or anyone else's. But is it just me? But are people just, what's wrong with people? Is it that they just don't care anymore? Is it that they're trying to con people? Is it that no one has any kind of respect for other people's time or whatever? I just feel like there's something going on with the world in general, whereby no one really gives a shit about anyone anymore. It's just, yeah, I'm just going to sell this thing, it's broken, I don't care if it inconveniences anyone. I don't care if I inconvenience anyone ever. It's all about me, as long as I get my money. I kind of feel like people have this sort of attitude, and there's just no consideration for other people. There's no awareness, no respect. And it's annoying me, basically. So anyway, that's my week. It's just ranting about that, and I'm just interested to know what your week's been like. Have you had to deal with stuff like this yourself? Do you buy second-hand goods on Amazon or eBay? You know, what's your experience? Do you have stuff like this as well, or is it just me? Because I don't know, right now I feel like I'm done with buying things. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next time.